The Athene Real Talk Podcast explores controversial ideas to stimulate debate and active thinking. These ideas do not always reflect Athene's personal views. Welcome to the Athene Real Talk Podcast.
He has been called the best gamer in the world, hands down.
World-famous gamer and philanthropist Athene.
Gaming for Good, it's called, has raised more than $20 million.
Using his notoriety to raise money for charity.
On activism, science, culture, and self-development.
Proud to have him in the studio today. I would not want to take you on in a video game.
Time to talk about this important stuff. I said in the title, Important Insight. Important real talk, I mean. To give you guys a little bit background, I've been really working quite a bit behind the scenes around all this perspective stuff. I've been talking a lot to Reese, to Fabio, to Ricardo, to actually quite some people here. And I've started to realize that guided sessions where you help people explore certain types of awarenesses is a very powerful way of helping people understand this perspective insight. I know by me explaining this right now, a lot of people might be very confused, go like, but what is this? I don't get it. And what I've actually been trying to do and figure out is which language is the one that will resonate the most with you guys. And is it possible to basically spread this awareness without having to go through guided sessions? Because guided sessions, whether it's possible online or even in real life, are a big bottleneck in the way of being able to spread it, because that means that for people to understand and get it, they would actually need 1v1 proper guidance. And that really slows down things dramatically. So I've been really breaking my head on, is there any way to maybe bypass this guided sessions where people are really being put in this mindset? For a big part, it's about language, about what is it that I can say. How can I basically communicate this insight or this way of thinking in a way that can resonate with more people? I think I found a way to explain it. And I'm not just going to explain it by saying it, but I will also use myself as an example of how I go about life. Basically, the insight, maybe we'll rephrase it in the future, but right now, the best way of explaining it is to be truly outside your head. And this is something that can sound like, okay, truly outside your head. Okay, I can understand being outside my head, but it goes extremely deep. It's about being truly outside your head and use perspective to guide your actions. The reason why I am so creative and why I have so much insight in things is because I approach things outside my head. Not always. Sometimes I can get caught up in my own mind when I don't understand something. Example is when I was just saying like people choose to be selfish. That was not so much being outside my head, that was being inside my head. I was inside my head because I was holding on to a belief that was not real. Of course, I didn't understand, I didn't know better. I didn't know that it was me being inside my head, but it was what it was. And you might say like, oh, so you can be thinking you're outside your head, still being inside your head. Yes, you can. When you're using certain beliefs or opinions and you hold on to them and they're not aligned with reality, you're being inside your head. So you might then say like, yeah, but that means that if you're outside your head, the only reason you're outside your head is if your beliefs align with reality. Yes and no. And when I say yes and no, I mean like, yes, your beliefs are aligned with reality, you are outside your head, but if you're emotionally attached to them, that's when you're inside your head. So I first have to really truly define what it means to be inside your head. And it goes very fucking far. Every single opinion, belief, or whatever you hold is being inside your head. And that's where it is. It's like, yeah, but if you're outside your head, then what do you do? What is it that drives your action? How do you go about life? I mean, it makes no sense. You need these beliefs and these ideas and these opinions in order to direct your life. Well, that's not the case. You can gain direction from perspective. And what I mean with that is by seeing the world through the eyes of other people, whether it's children in Africa or scientists or other cultures, but not just people. You can also see and gain perspective by looking at it from evolutionary perspective, or zoom out and look at life from a wider perspective. You can look at the Earth as a planet. You can gain perspective and look at things from all these different angles. And by doing so, you create this more accurate view about the world that automatically leads to your actions. So action, rather than being stimulated by what you believe or your opinions or ideas, is stimulating by pure perspective. And that's when you don't even experience a choice. Choiceless awareness arises not just when choice is not there anymore, but more so because you just are. and you just do what you gotta do. And the reason why you experience choice is because you have these beliefs and these opinions and these ideas that you claim to be yours. And then you have this duality between one or the other. But if you're completely outside your head, these beliefs and these ideas and these opinions are not part of your awareness. I was talking to Reese just earlier, and I'll give you guys some insight in how I go about life. And I know that all this explanation here, I'm being outside my head, but I do know that if I want to explain this really properly to each one of them, the best way for me to do so is by being inside your head, outside my head, inside your head, and then use the language and the concepts that you understand in order to convey the message. But of course, since I'm talking to many people, the best bet I have is to use language that resonates with most people. But I was talking to Reese, and basically I even told Reese, I said, like, a lot of the times when I talk to you, even when it comes down to ideas and such, I see that you're inside your head. And what I mean with that is, I see that he is making connections using his own experience. And you might wonder, like, but man, Athene, everybody makes connections using their own experience, even you do, all the time. The thing is that when I speak about experience, it's about your own personal experience. You might say, like, yeah, but that's exactly the same. Yes and no. Because when you look at the attachments and the conditioning you have gone through, even though it might be a source of information and knowledge, it is not a roadmap or just a global map of how the world works. And that is why when you enrich it with perspective and with different angles, you see that this little map that you use to navigate your own social conditioned life is actually very warped. It's not really aligned with reality. It doesn't even overlap. And this map that I'm talking about is actually your identity. It's the belief of what you think is important in life. But if you're truly outside your head, you really look at everything from this detached perspective where you just try to gain perspective by seeing things for what they are through different angles, because you know that the way you look at something can always be quite biased. And that is something that a lot of people do. When they're creative, they're not truly creative. When people are creative, they're creative within their own framework, within their own head. When I'm being creative outside my head. And it's completely different because the connections I make are not defined by my experience, but rather by the perspective I've gained by seeing things through different angles. And as a result, when I look at a game, for example, I can look at it from a point of view that is not based on my experience about the game, but rather the understanding of why the game is popular. And it really enables me to come up with really cool ideas all the time because the landscape of my creativity has no limits. I can literally just put certain boundaries based on, for example, data that I have seen, like target audience, 12-year-old, what do they like, cannot project. I can basically shorten the range of possibilities and think truly freely within that framework. And as a result, sometimes when people talk to me or come up to me to ask for feedback, I can really give such a creative responses and ideas, not so much because I'm a genius or whatever the fuck, but just because I'm not trapped inside my own head. So why is that? How come I have this outside the head perspective and try to understand things from such a point of view that is very much detached from my own beliefs, ideas, and opinions? How come I am like that? The reason why that is because when I grew up, when I was really young, I actually had a very fulfilling life. And very early on, I went about things from a very outside my head perspective because I used reason in a very early age of my life when I was really like 11 years old. And as a result, I was looking at the world from this perspective framework where I project myself in other people, try to understand why people do what they do. And since I could not relate to people, I didn't have so many neural wiring that was pulling me back inside my head. Like if you grew up with certain social conditioning, right? And you have certain identity where you like a certain band or whatever, you gravitate towards these other people that have these same interests. And as a result, you can relate to other people and you can make certain connections based on your own experience from within your head. You basically get rewarded for being inside your head. Because by being inside your head, you can actually, recognize patterns. But for me, it was the other way around. Because I was constantly looking at things from an outside perspective, I had no way to relate to people for a very long time, for most part of my life, I couldn't relate to people because I was constantly having this perspective, like there's so many bigger issues in the world, so why don't you do that? Why don't you do that? I was constantly going about things from this detached perspective where you just look at the world for what it is. And as a result, whenever I tried to get my own experience into the equation, I was being more alienated. And that really that forced me into this mindset, into this way of thinking where I don't really mix my own experience as part of the equation because it corrupts the data. It makes the predictions worse. And that didn't just translate into the way I went about things of understanding people, but even when I was processing information or going to school or watching movies or whatever, I always had this way of not mixing my own experience with what I watched. And as a result, my memory and the way I even store information is quite different. I talked about this in the past about logical checkpoints and stuff, but basically the bottom line is there is no part of me that I mix in what I see because the part that is me does not exist. I just am constantly this outside my head perspective, outside my head awareness where I go about things and such. But I also talk to Reese, and the thing is that it's not just that simple because when you're tired or when you ate stuff that is really very hard on your stomach and stuff, your awareness shrinks. Your hormone levels get affected and stuff. And what I realize as well is that hormones have a very important impact on your behavior and the way you also start believing things. You see that very much in the difference between gender. And being able to be aware of these dynamics also allows you to understand that it's not just as simple as, okay, this is just an insight, done. No, there's a lot of things that have to align in order for you to enable yourself to grow into this awareness. That's why people that come over here end up growing so much faster, because the food is good, there is no constant noise in your environment, you get to do what you believe is right, and right now you even get proper guidance in being able to have perspective, to get more outside your head. And still yet, I see people here being really completely, tormented by their own demons. While before I had an approach where I just looked at it and was like judgmental, because I was like, you're being selfish. Now I just look at it and I understand that it is people just being trapped inside their own head, and it's very easy for me to pinpoint that. What I also want to say is that the hormones is not just also that, it's also interconnected. There is like a dance going on also with the extent to which you're scared, in the extent to which you feel safe. If you don't feel safe, you're more inclined to be inside your head. When you don't feel any danger, then you're much more likely to be outside your head. You're more open-minded, you're less defensive. And the thing is that perspective allows you to understand that there is no reason to feel unsafe. What's the worst thing that can happen? I mean, we still live in a time where even the worst case scenario is one that is not going to kill you. And when you can find peace through perspective, through being outside your head, you have this synergy, this balance with your own fears that can actually, one can overcome the other. Of course, you can also go about it from within your head through meditation. There's many different ways to try and cope with your fears from within, but you're so much more ahead when you do it from outside in, because you gain perspective, you can put things into context, and you can really truly look at it from an outside perspective. Now the question is, okay, Athene, like most people that have even listened to this entire conversation, you probably are listening all of this from within your head. Most of you guys are really inside your head. Everything I say, everything I tell you is channeled through the way you look at the world. Being outside your head means you don't carry on your beliefs, your ideas, and your opinions. You just listen to it from an unbiased perspective. And you just try to absorb the information, which not only is more aligned with what I'm actually trying to say, it's also something that would benefit you so much more. But being outside your head is something that you have to, get into. And I was thinking if there's exercises, I know that guided sessions can help you being outside your head. Although it's very easy to get pulled in again quite easily when you have these triggers that bring about this neural activity again where you're back inside your head. So finding ways to stay outside your head and having exercises where you daily practice it will benefit you more than anything I've ever told you on the Real Talk. It is literally the first step. Being truly outside your head, would just put you very close if not even ahead of my own awareness. And the way you actually complement the outside your head awareness with action is by gaining perspective and looking at the world for what it is through our understanding, through other people's eyes and all these things. I want to say that whenever you ask a question, let's say you have an opinion or you have an idea or you have something that keeps you busy, it's because you're inside your head. You're busy with it. Now you can say like, yeah, but what about you? You're also having questions, how to help others and all that stuff. That's also, in a way, being inside your head. No. The difference is that what keeps me busy is not me. It's not myself. It is life in general. And as a result, I just have this very selfless awareness where I just try to see how I can contribute and help. It's a journey. It's a long journey to figure it out what is the best way to say certain things. And yes, sometimes I do things that are less impactful and reach less people. Sometimes I do things that are more impactful. But I do think it starts by being outside your head. So now, how do you do that by yourself? That is something we're working on. Because I know how I can help you guys when you're here next to me. I know how I can help you be outside your head. But how can you do it yourself? We're thinking maybe writing exercises or something. We're looking into it. And I will let you guys know about it. But this is basically something I've been thinking about immensely, and I do know certain people already can resonate with what I say. But it basically is really detach yourself from your beliefs, ideas, and opinions. Don't look at them as your own. And just try to have this complete outside your head perspective where you look at the world through the eyes of other people, through the eyes of evolution, through the eyes of science, or understanding. I would actually say, don't look it through your own eyes. Maybe that's the best way of telling you guys what it is. Don't look at the world through your own eyes. Look at the world from all the other perspectives and take your perspective as lost. And if you go through life like that, I'm telling you, you will be much more calibrated. You won't just be inside your own island of conditioned life you've gone through. No, it will be wider, it will be bigger. You will really expand your awareness drastically. I also want to say even more, be aware that almost all the questions you guys will ask now will be a result of you just being inside your head. It's things that bother you. It's because you're still inside your head. Gaining perspective, truly trying to understand what it is, for example, to be me, talking to you guys right now and really try to understand what is being said will give you more understanding than any question you ask from your own perspective. I would actually try to say it's like get rid of your own perspective and gain others' perspective. Linkin Park singer committed suicide. I saw it, yeah. Honestly, I feel more sorry for kids dying in Syria. And that's the thing, that's the problem with not using cognitive empathy. There's so many people that feel more sorry for Linkin Park committing suicide, which was his choice to walk out of his own life, than for all the kids that are getting bombed every day and are dying innocently. It's quite surreal. Huh? The reason why you guys find it worse for Linkin Park is not because you guys don't have the ability to care for the children in Syria or in Africa or whatever. It's because you can identify more with Linkin Park than these children in Africa or in Syria. But we have the ability to project, cognitive project. I will call it cognitive project because project is different in psychology, but we have the ability to cognitive project and actually see the world through the eyes of other people without merging it with our own experience. You can really right now look at me and think, what is it that is going on in his head? Why is he doing what he's doing? You look at all the information and such that you have about me and just completely unbiasedly try to understand why I do what I do, why do I stream, why do I do charity, why do I try to do good, all that shit. You can actually really have the ability to get outside your mind and look at it from my eyes. Because when you use your own experience and your own understanding to understand me, you're doing it wrong. That's not cognitive empathy. Cognitive empathy is that you project in me without carrying your bags of your own experience. You really truly try to see it from a blank page. It's like, for example, when I explain cognitive empathy, everybody says like, oh, I already do that. Even today, like yesterday, right? I was talking about it to Fabio, to Rafael. They said like, yeah, but I think I do it today. Fabio said like, no, I don't do it at all. I figured it out earlier today and he was blown away. Rafael, same thing. He said, for the first time in my life, I feel like I have to make things right with my mother. Can you believe that? Same with Jan. Said the same thing. Said I really started to realize how cold I was to my mother. And the thing is like, empathy doesn't teach you that shit. Empathy makes you realize how much you care for your mother when she passes away, when it's too late. Cognitive empathy, on the other hand, allows you to really see the world through her eyes and understand how much she truly cares for you. More than you could ever imagine through your own experience. You can't, because you're not your mother. This insight is so fundamental. And you can do the same for people in Syria, for people in Auschwitz, for people all over the world. And you know what it does when you have this cognitive empathy? It turns you into a human that has perspective, that puts his own problem into perspective as well, and that just tries to do good. Not because he has to. You won't need discipline to do good. You won't need discipline to be a good person. And the thing is, the more you do this, the more you practice this, the more you will become not only a decent human being, but the more you will be clear-headed, the more you will be connected with the world, the more you will be at peace, even though it is very uncomfortable. It is very uncomfortable to see the world through other people's eyes, because then you have to experience their misery. But I can tell you, it is nothing compared to the misery that you experience not doing it. So there, for example, Ksa, Athene, please, all Muslims are terrorists. Why would we care for them? What the fuck? I know probably you're joking, but there's people that believe that. And they go about it like this. All Muslims are bad, except my neighbor. He's a Muslim, but he's a pretty chill guy. My neighbor is not too bad. But all the other Muslims, they are really evil. It's because the only way they actually connect to people is through empathy. Because they know their Muslim neighbor and they see they're just humans like him. He empathizes with them, he likes him, and that's why he says, oh, these Muslims they're shit, but he's good. It's because all these other Muslims don't even exist. They're just NPCs to him. They're just like some collective news things that he filtered by looking at the news or whatever. But if you use cognitive empathy and project in people, even Muslims all around the world, and see through their lives, to their experience, to their culture, then suddenly you start understanding them. You start knowing them. And you automatically feel a strong connection and a will to help. If you don't understand why people do certain things, it's not their fault, it's your fault. If you realize that you can understand everyone, and if you do understand them, you would do exactly the same if you would go through that life exactly the same you did. That's when you become so much more aware. You gain so much more perspective. And I'm going to say something really crazy, but it's true. If you look at a Muslim and you cannot imagine that you would be a Muslim if you would have grown up there, then you are caught up in your own head. You might say like, okay, I can understand a Muslim, but I can't understand an ISIS terrorist. Then I would tell you, if you can't understand an ISIS terrorist, that's not his fault, that's yours. Because there is a reason why an ISIS terrorist is an ISIS terrorist. Even more, there is a reason why Hitler was Hitler. And you might say like, so you're going to tell me that I got to understand Hitler? And I will tell you, yes. Understanding does not mean agreeing with him, but understanding allows you to gain perspective on why World War II happened in the first place. So did you say you don't care about logic, consistency, can't believe? Topsy, what you guys have to understand is that what I do is defined by what works. So when I communicate to you guys, it's not defined by what I believe or what I think or what I feel, but rather about what works. So the concepts that I use or the relationships I use or the connections I make are completely irrelevant to me in communication. What matters is whether what I say, how I say it, whether that actually has a practical result. If it has no practical result, then it's useless. So why logic? The reason why I talk about logic for so long is because it worked. It gave some kind of good results. I never really relate to this core value being logic. I do care about consistency, but I would say like it's more something like you care about the truth. You care about what is true. That's all. So consistency, truth, whatever. You don't want to lie to yourself. Maybe that's easier for people to understand. And from that, everything comes out of. And what defines what is true or not, it's reality. So it's just like this awareness of really being chill and down to earth, very detached, and just do what I can do. But the thing is though, like when you add a layer and a layer and a layer on top of that in order to get things that work, things become much more complicated. My act goes from very aggressive on the stream to being very nice on the stream, or from debating people that get me more people to watch and create controversy to just having chill talks with people that have managed to change their life because of having a more logical perspective. And the thing is that, like, I have no attachments whatsoever to any of these concepts. I'm not the kind of person that really goes through life and thinks like, this is how it is. I don't do that. I just go through life and let it come at me one moment at a time. And if I get data and information that changes my view, I just change my view. I'm just not attached to my beliefs. I'm not attached to my opinions. I'm not attached to my feelings. I'm not attached to the way I look at the world. I'm not attached to what I want to achieve. For me, it's reality that defines my path and not me. I'm an extremely detached person. Although that's not something people always see in me, because when I interact with them, I just think, what is the best way of getting stuff done? What is the best way to see how things work? I think I've been following you 100% away. Hadn't any questions till now. The most things you talk about, like consistency, projection, awareness, practically, identity, are pretty clear. Please talk about the core. So why do you think life's about evolving as species and not as a synergy of cells that happen to be you? Because purpose is a concept that is created by humans. So when you talk about purpose, you have to look at it from the reference frame in which it's being used. So the reference frame is you, but what are you? Like, understanding you is actually a journey that everybody is still into, even I am still. Since everything is relative to the reference frame, what are you? When you look at that, you start seeing that you are much more than your identity. You are your experiences. You are what was required for the experiences to emerge. Like, you really see you are basically everything. Everything you experience is what you are. The knowledge, the information, everything. I'm talking on an awareness level. I'm not talking so much on a level that is disconnected from the awareness. I'm really talking about an awareness level. So when you then start looking at things from that, you start realizing that your awareness is not an absolute. Like, things are probabilities. And that's where the idea that everything, the knowledge that everything are probabilities, even your own existence, really allows you to detach yourself from what is right or wrong, because you know everything is just fluid. And then you immediately start realizing that your awareness most likely came to existence with evolution, with life evolving. And basically you owe your existence to that. If it wasn't for evolution, you would still be a rock. Actually, you wouldn't even be a rock, because even a rock got to a certain point with stars and all that stuff. Like, you wouldn't even be a rock. So I'm just saying, like, when you just look at what you are, moving forward is truly the fabric of everything that brought about your existence. And you might say, like, yeah, but this is all RNG. Like, things just happen. There is no real moving forward. You can have different lifestyles. The ones that are less good die out, and the ones that are better survive. Yes, but that is when you detach yourself from who you are and you look at it from a bigger perspective. But you always have to look at it relative to your reference frame. And when you do so, then you are the one that survived because of all these events taking place. And that is where you really see a strong line between stardust and what you are. And following that path is exactly what you are designed to do.
Subscribe to youtube.com/AtheneWins. Watch the live stream at twitch.tv/AtheneLive and follow The Real Athene on Snapchat.